So I bought a Tesla Model 3 and I wanted to share some of my impressions of having the car, well, for a week now and about 600 miles. So I'm gonna share some of my thoughts on it. My first thoughts about the car is getting in. Thumb, angle, strange, but not difficult. Definitely strange. Now, if you're not familiar with the Tesla Model 3, it is an all-electric vehicle. That's right, no gas engine, no backup, no, you drive it with electricity only. I thought that was kind of a known fact, but based on taking my friends for test drives, it's not. A lot of people have asked that question. Also, I'm sitting in a back seat because I wanted to try to gain some perspective on this panoramic roof it has. They have this really sweeping glass. As my son put it when he sat in the back seat, he's like, it's like a spaceship. And here's another perspective. So you can see all the way around. So this is from the driver's side and all the way back here. So first impressions when you get in the car is it feels really advanced. It's got a neat perspective, because I don't think I've been in a car that has an all glass roof that's like this. And oddly, my Scion, which was my previous car, had a glass roof but didn't have this much glass. Like, it's only a partial glass roof with a sunroof. But this is, even in the back seat, it's an impressive car, because yeah, it goes all the way back. Now, this is a feature of both the Model S and the Model 3. And the other confusing thing that some people said, oh, you spent over $100,000 on a car. No, the Tesla Model 3 is the first vehicle they made that is much less expensive. This is a larger production model car. Matter of fact, the price on this car, this is kind of meta. You can go to the web browser to open up the web browser on this dash panel and buy a Tesla from inside your Tesla. But this is the same spec car. I adjusted it to be the same as mine. So the purchase price is $48,740. And this is before, this is not the incentive. So if you include potential savings, it gets less. They have different calculated prices on here, so you can figure out which one you want. I like the purchase price because those savings and incentives come back as rebates, and they vary by state, vary by federal programs that are available at the time. So throw it out there. This car's, I paid for it once I added title, tax, all those little destination fees and everything. I think it came to $51,000 and change for this vehicle. So it's much less expensive than the previous Tesla models. Now, a few other things about the specs of the car. This car does go 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds, which is really incredible and really interesting because there's no sound being all electric. There's just this, you can barely hear it whine of the motor when you accelerate that hard, but it is just sets you back in the seat. It's very strange from someone like myself who's had and owned several larger performance cars, including some that had excess of 700 horsepower. Those 700 horses on a normal car make a lot of noise. Versus the Tesla, you accelerate amazingly fast immediately because the lack of a transmission, you just have electric motors driving wheels, so there's not any switching of gears that need to happen. It just goes and the power is immediate. There's no delay like you would have in a gasoline-powered engine or diesel. But this car also still maintains, despite all that speed, a 320-mile range on a full charge. That is really interesting. That is amazing that they have finally come along to where electric cars become practical. So electric cars are not really a new concept, but they're a different concept in terms of battery, because that was always the challenge of these, was the batteries never lasted. Some of the earliest cars you can see at a local museum here are electric, but no one had the range problem figured out. Battery technology had to really catch up. And boy, has it. So this car has a lot of features I'm going to dive into in another video in terms of the way the charging system works and how you charge it. But overall, don't worry, don't overthink it like I did. It's fairly uncomplicated to charge it. And a lot of people get what they call range anxiety, or that's their worry about electric vehicles, that the range on it won't be enough for them. Well, that's really not a problem because, one, I plug it in and just leave it plugged in at work. So while I'm at work, it's charging. So whenever I go somewhere, provided I don't exceed 320 miles in a single day, I can charge it back when I get to work again. Generally, if you hire a licensed electrician, you're looking at $500 or less to install. Easier if you are knowledgeable enough to do it yourself. When you do the charging video, you're going to see it's pretty simple. So That being said, you also have to consider things like a little bit different. Like you don't have to think about stopping at a gas station, because even when I go to clients, like the other day, there was a charger there. I charged my car when I went to a client. It's becoming more frequent. You don't think about it until you have an electric vehicle, but there's different apps like PlugShare that will tell you where all the locations are. Many of them are free because it's so inexpensive to charge these up. Roughly in Michigan, based on our kilowatt hour rates, you're talking $10 roughly to fill up 300 miles on a car. I can tell you that my Scion got good gas mileage and could not touch that kind of price. I mean, to fill up 300 miles on a petrol vehicle is just a lot more expensive. Now, for those of you that are asking, well, this has got to be a terrible car for road trips because, you know, what do you got to drag an extension cord with you? The Tesla Supercharger network is everywhere. There's other EV locations you can charge, but specifically the Tesla ones are amazing. And that's because they are super high wattage chargers, and instead of taking hours to charge a car, they charge it in like less than an hour for 300 miles. So if you want a road trip from Detroit, where I'm located, to California, awesome, have at it. You can plan your trip inside the car itself. The navigation system will even stop and locate all the different chargers for you, which is really, really cool. I mean, that's a neat feature. It'll help do the route planning for you and say, hey, these are the chargers you need to stop at to get to the destination you chose. So you don't really have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. Just listen to the car. There's people who have complained like, oh, I ran out of juice. I'm like, did you listen to the car? Well, no, I thought it would go. I know my car, right? I don't understand people who do that, but listen to the car. It's very accurate on the mileage. Now, the self-driving mode is a lot of things that people get confused about or ask about. This car does not have full self-driving. I did not purchase that option. It's a software upgrade, like an unlock, like a game upgrade, where, you know, you get some extra DLC content. And I don't know, I might buy it later. That's the nice thing about it. It's a software update, so you give them $6,000. That's the price as of July 2019, and they unlock these full self-driving mode. Teslas do come with autopilot. I love the autopilot, and I'm going to do a separate video on that, but it works really well. Basically, it'll keep you in lane, keep up with the car, so when it slows down, well, the car slows down with you when cars are going, so traffic is much less rage-inducing, or what's the word I'm looking for? I don't go crazy driving in that stop-and-go traffic. I was stuck in it yesterday, driving back from that client, but the car will creep when the cars creep forward and stop when they stop. It does that. And of course, once you get on the freeway, the autopilot's amazing for the way it drives, stays in lane, and just kind of takes care of things for you. Now, the question, and I'm going to be addressing this in a separate video about the autopilot, but real quick answer is, yeah, you can take over anytime. Grab the wheel. You don't have to hit buttons. You don't have to disengage it. You win in the fight. So if you hit the gas to override its deceleration, you can win. If you hit the brake, it disengages autopilot immediately, and once again, you win and you can override the car. And if you do neither, just grab the steering wheel and turn it. Same thing. You can turn the steering wheel and it disengages autopilot because it realizes you wanted to do something different. So you're not in control of the car. You are being assisted by the car, which is really nice. Now, my other impressions so far have been just enjoying the interior of this car. So I'm going to give you that perspective, not just that roof, but from the cockpit standpoint. It's really, really great. Like the whole layout, this one big screen controlling everything. It may look a bit complicated to have a touch screen that controls all the car, but it's really not. I'm going to go over that in a little bit real quick here just to show you guys how it works, but it's really, really simple. So from this perspective here, the wheel straight, is park, neutral, drive, kind of the same, but you know, no big deal. You just put your foot on the brake. It's in drive, it's in reverse, it's in park. Just tap the little button on the end. Not a big deal. It's reminding me I don't have a safety belt on. And we'll go ahead and swipe these notices away. Windshield wiper can be adjusted here or over here. So pretty easy to get to. Backup camera is accessible all the time. Charge, range, doesn't have a gas gauge, tells you how far you have to go. So you don't have to guess and go, well, I'm at 20% power, how far is that? It's always calculating that, and it has an option to give you like your energy uses, when it's regenning battery, which by the way, it regens the battery as you let off the gas, so your brakes and things like that don't wear out. Matter of fact, brakes and maintenance on this car is pretty amazing. You're talking about a car that can go roughly 200,000 miles between brake changes, and that's because you are using regen brakes. So this car does weigh 4,000 pounds with the long range battery like I have. Does still maintain the 0 to 60, but all that kinetic energy when you slow down can be turned back into electricity by using the motors in reverse, essentially. So when you're letting off the gas, it doesn't coast. You have to kind of keep your pedal down a little for the coast. And then when you let off completely, it says, oh, you want to go into regen mode without pressing the brakes. The brakes on this are traditional when you use the traditional brakes. Your rotors with ceramic pad, standard like you find on most any automotive vehicle, but they're not used very often. And the overall maintenance on this, there's no oil changes, there's no filter changes, there's very few things actually go wrong in it because it's such a simple design. So that's made me really excited about the car, and it gives you kind of that longevity of it. These cars have been around for a little while. The Model 3's been around for just a couple years. It's their latest one, but there's people with like the Model S, well over 200,000 miles on them and still going strong. They generally last, and this is true of many electric cars, not just the Tesla. This is just a feature. When you have less moving parts, it's an engineering puzzle. Less moving parts, if they're well designed, there's less potential things to go wrong. The batteries is what everyone worries about. Oh no, that battery won't last long, Tom. Once again, people with over 200,000 miles on their Tesla are talking about losing, as I understood this, at about 150,000 miles, the average has been about 5% loss of battery capacity. So 5% less of 320 mile range. I'm going to say that's still pretty fair. There's people said at about 200,000, they're looking at only 6%. So it only loses a little bit more at 200,000, and there are people with even more miles on it. Now the car comes with an 8-year, 120,000 mile warranty to cover that. So I don't have a worry like, oh no, I'm going to not have a battery that lasts long enough, blah, blah, blah. It's really not a concern. I know that's like the first thing people think about because the early ones where they use lead acid batteries, yeah, there's a way different for those old style batteries versus the technology we have today. We've come a long, long ways. This is not exactly even the same chemical composition that you see in a car, or that you see in a phone. That's not what's in this car. It's very different. I'll link to a great video that kind of explains the battery technology better that I was really happy with. Now, if we take a quick walk around the car, look under the hood, and I don't think they just call it a front trunk, but it's a frunk as far as I'm concerned, as far as my son is concerned as well. So you have storage in the front, then you can walk around to the back of the car. And no surprise here, a wonderfully big trunk. Actually quite big, and the seats fold down, so you have that as an option as well. But as far as the perspective of the car, the way it looks, the stance of it, I think it looks really nice. I'm really happy with it, except for the minute I pulled up here, a bird pooped on it, but I washed it and then, that happened. But it's sleek. The aerodynamics of it, the drag coefficient, all that stuff is, really nice on the car. Now, the sensors, the driving, the cameras, there are cameras all over this car. So we've got a camera here, I think we got three or four cameras up here at the top. Backup camera, of course, but that's less exciting. And I know there's a series of sensors up here, and I am doing some playing with it. It doesn't just work to detect, so I don't hit the curb and watch cars as they go. It works really well to even see small obstacles. I was playing around with setting things in front of the car, and it will say, hey, that, I gotta figure exactly how many inches, but something that's 4 inches tall sitting on there, even though that is, easily would go under the car, you can see it on the sensors, and it says, hey, there's something in your way, which I thought was kind of novel. But the last thing I'm gonna do is take you for a drive in it and give you an idea of how that goes, because boy, that's where the car is amazing. It's fun to drive, and it's a little bit scary, but it's great to let it drive you as well. Now, the driving is where this thing gets pretty neat. So it's similar to a traditional car. Put your foot on the brake, put it in gear, put it in drive. Now, there is no transmission, so this is the first thing that I always find really novel. I'm driving forward, and you'd never do this in a normal car. Well, some of the newer cars have a stop from doing this because they're also electronic, but you can just throw it in reverse anytime. Well, not anytime. It will stop you from doing this at any really high speeds, but yeah, it definitely works fine for... why is this person doing that? All right. Now, it does stop you from doing things stupid like throwing it in reverse at high speed. It beeped at me, says, yeah, you can't do that. But the concept that there's no transmission is just novel to me because I am a person who, always liked cars. I've owned, like I said, several performance cars, and this is so much different, but so much nicer. It kind of works the way you think cars should work. Now, it's drawing all the cars around me. It realizes there's a big truck behind me, and it has a hard time sometimes understanding them when they come up behind you when you're stopped. But while you're driving, you'll watch it draw all these cars. So it's able to see these people next to me. It's able to read the speed limit signs to realize I'm in an area that does 25 mile an hour. And all these assistive technologies are really nice. But even in residential areas, it doesn't see the road just yet. Now it does. You can turn on the auto driving feature, and it says, okay, I'll go ahead and stop and start when these people go and stop, and you can adjust the speed. Now, one of the things about this is people always concerned when they see an accident in a Tesla, like, oh my gosh, where's it in auto driving mode? And you just watch this person get in front of me and slow down. It will go ahead and slow down with me. Now, auto driving mode, auto selected speed restricted to 30 mile an hour, reads the stop signs and decides how many miles over the speed limit you can go, which is restricted to 5. So I'm going to take it out of auto driving mode and turn around into park over here. But the car is nice because it's so easy to, take control or drive it. And boy, with the weight, the balance of the car, it feels like a real performance car. So I can drive this. I can easily swing around corners. Even though it weighs 4,000 pounds, it does not handle like a 4,000 pound car would. And that's because the system has a battery pack located very well balanced at the very bottom of the car. And I mean bare bottom of it. So you have this really even weight distribution because the majority of the weight is the battery. So you're evenly distributed without high weight like above the wheels, as in all of the weight is below the axle height, which from an automotive design perspective is kind of where you want the weight. So you get this really nice centered, not uneven, and the battery itself is very evenly balanced. So it just makes for a well handling car. Now the freeway is where the autopilot is really exciting. You get it on the freeway and it just goes, man. You set this in autopilot, and I picked the car up in Cleveland, and it drove me pretty much all the way back to Detroit. Probably 90% of the time I had it on autopilot. I drove it some around some of the curves because I wanted to feel it, but it actually takes the mundane, boring parts of the freeway where you're just trying to get somewhere out of it. That's a big advantage the autopilot has, is certainly that. The last thing I'll touch on is a lot of people are worried about service, going, hey Tom, you picked this all the way up in Cleveland, why didn't you buy it in Michigan? Well, Michigan has a stupid rule, and that rule was made to protect consumers many, many years ago, that says, hey, we want to protect you consumers, so we only allow dealers to sell these vehicles through third parties. And Tesla, you're buying direct, and because you're buying direct, well, that's going to mean you can't sell in Michigan. But don't worry, there's a Toledo service center to actually have the car serviced, and the Tesla Rangers will come out and service the car if it needs to be. Now this is going to be interesting because I'm passing a car right here, and we got two cyclists, not motorcycles, cyclists. And look, it draws the cyclist. That's cool. So it can tell the difference between a motorcycle, a car, a truck on the driving. It's really impressive how advanced this whole system is. But my overall, like I said, I've only had it for 600 miles, but I've talked to a lot of my friends who, what got me to buy this car was I took a ride in my friend's. Actually, he let me drive it for about a half hour, and I said, wow, this is just a different next level car, and that's what sold me on it. I'm really excited about it. Some of my friends have had theirs for a number of years and kept telling me, Tom, you got to check this car out. And you can go online and look. There's a lot of people who own these cars and, like I said, have 200,000 miles on them, are still as excited about them as when they bought them. They are just, really singing the praises of Tesla. And this model at, $50,000, I know they advertise it as a $35,000 car. You can get the bare bones for that, but I highly recommend at least getting that long range battery, which will push that price up. So that is something to consider on it, that you're going to spend a little bit more than
the 35,000 that they had on there. But I think this is a really great car. I'm really happy with it. I don't have any buyer's remorse, which I was worried I would have because I don't like spending money on new cars or any large appreciating asset. But one thing you'll find interesting that I did as well, I was really hunting for a used one, and I am impressed when you look at the original selling price of the car and what a used one sells for. They really maintain their value better than a lot of other vehicles do. So that was a interesting insight that I'm like, okay, it doesn't depreciate as bad as I thought. But that's it. Like I said, I'm gonna do more videos on very specific topics of it. Leave comments below if there's something that you want to know about it. If you want to take a test ride in it, you're one of my local friends, you know how to get a hold of me. These railroad tracks are terrible, which is also why I didn't go with the performance model or the low profile rims. If you can't tell, we have atrociously bad roads here in Michigan. But I'll be doing some deep dives on very specific topics on it, including charging options for it, and kind of do a whole debrief of everything I learned, and a couple things I didn't find concise videos on. But yeah, go do your research. You'll find a lot of other people on YouTube that are excited about these cars as well. So it's not hard to go around on YouTube and find a lot of information about these Teslas. There's a lot of forums. Go ahead, do your reading on them, and decide if it might be the car for you. And if you do decide you want one, I have an offer code that gets me and you some free charging miles at the Tesla Superchargers. They used to have a really cool incentive program to help buy Teslas. That I know if we've canceled all those plans. The only plans they have now is I have a cool, offer code for that. If you buy one, it gets both of us some charging miles. I actually use my friend's offer code, so I got 1,000 free Supercharger miles on this. But yeah, it's a great car. That's my first impressions of it after owning it for 600 and some odd miles and a week of driving it. I still smile every time I get in the car, and trust me, take a test ride in one and you'll smile too. Thanks.